Hi, everybody. It's Miss Starr, and today we're going to be talking about the Trojan War Notes, Part 1. Before our school was closed due to the COVID-19 crisis, we had already discussed quite a bit about the Trojan War, how it got started, and many of the characters that are involved. This is a review for those students that were absent on the days just prior to us closing the school. So the first questions that we have to ask are, why are we even studying this? And it would be so that we can understand why Odysseus is on a journey to try to get back home. If you were in college, you would read a story called the Iliad, and the Iliad would be about this thick, and it would tell you the entire story of the Trojan War. People that are in the story, like Odysseus, but also King Agamemnon and this guy named Paris and this beautiful woman named Helen. So there are quite a few characters. So what I want you to do while you are watching this video and going through the PowerPoint is I want you to keep track of your characters on your Trojan War characters notes, and I also want you to answer the questions on the Trojan War questions. So as you can see, it starts out by saying, according to blank, the great city of Troy stood in a commanding position overlooking blank. So it's a very easy fill in the blank sort of assignment. So let's begin. We're going to go up through slide 11, and then our next video will be 12 up to the end. So was Troy the city real? Well, according to Homer, there was this enormous city called Troy, and it stood on a mountaintop, and it was considered a commanding position looking over what's called the Hellespont, and that's between the Aegean Sea and the Black Sea. So it was very strategic in terms of the military. So at the end of the 19th century, there was a German businessman named Heinrich Schliemann, and he believed that Homer was, in fact, talking about a real place, and he wanted to prove that this was true. So he started to explore the area, and he found the ruins of several cities that were laid on top of each other. And we have a slide about that coming up. So, but experts, despite this discovery, they've always disagreed about whether this place was really real and whether it was really Troy, but there is some evidence that shows that there were, in fact, numerous large cities that could have been what Homer was describing in the story of the Iliad. Now, remember, the Iliad is the story of the Trojan War. So, was the myth real? No, of course. Was there an actual war? Well, in short, no. Of course, gods, goddesses, and the basic storyline are all mythological, but Helen, the beautiful Helen, could have been based on a beautiful queen of the area, and this story probably came out of an actual war that was between the Greeks and the Trojans. So we have to look back in history and think that if you are the commander of a city in a very strategic place, what would you be doing? You'd be fighting off contenders that want to take over your city so they can take it, right? So possibly this was a battle for territory or to influence some trade on the Black Sea or where Greeks were settled, right? But overall, this was just a myth. So moving on. Just to show you all that this is the Greek world map, we've got Italy over here. Sadly, at the time I'm recording this video, it has terrible, terrible things going on due to COVID-19. But we want to focus in on there being this as the Greek. Let me increase the size of this on your screen. Sorry, folks, trying to do this on the fly, increasing the size of this just a smidge, and we can see that Greece is over here, and then Troy would be on the right side. But if we want to take an even closer look, this is the map of Greece, and over here, this would have been Troy. So this is the Aegean Sea, and that'd be the Black Sea. So let's move on. There are the layers that we mentioned before, all of these city layers that Heinrich Schliemann was able to find in his exploration. But let's talk about the myth itself. Before the war, there was a king named Priam and his queen Hecuba. They were of the city Troy, and they had been told a prophecy that if they had a baby boy, that their son, he was going to eventually cause the downfall of their city. So when Queen Hecuba had the baby, they decided to take the baby and give it to someone to stick it out on a hill and leave it there to die. But they did not realize that King Priam and Queen Hecuba, they did not realize that Paris, baby Paris, was discovered by a shepherd. And so he was taken to live safely there until he was grown up. Right now, there's a Netflix series that I mentioned in class. It's a little adult, so I'm not sure you're ready for it yet. But it's the story, and they've kind of twisted it a little bit. But that's the way Greek myths go. So Paris goes to live with this shepherd, and he's there until he's an adult. Meanwhile, at the wedding of Achilles' mother named Thetis and this other guy named Peleus, she's the goddess of discord. Eris was angry that she was not invited. She's a goddess, so we want to add her to our goddesses. And so she took this golden apple and she threw it into the crowd. And on the apple, it was inscribed, like you see here, for the fairest. Well, three goddesses that we're going to add to our document were there. And that was Hera and Athena and Aphrodite. And they go reaching for the apple, kind of like women go clamoring for a bouquet at a wedding, right? And they're all grabbing for this apple. And they're like, I'm the fairest. No, I'm the fairest. And they're all grabbing for this apple. So Zeus was asked to make a choice. Who's the most beautiful? Who should get this apple? But Zeus was unable to make the choice, and he didn't want to make his wife Hera mad. So he asks Hermes, his delivery god, the guy with the little wings on his feet, to go find young Paris to make the decision about who's the most beautiful. So each goddess that wants the apple tries to bribe Paris, and in the process, Hera says, I can give you all this power and wealth. Where Athena, we know what she's powerful at. She offers him great victories in battle and wisdom. But then Aphrodite, love conquers all, right? She smiles and she promises Paris is going to meet the most beautiful woman in the world and that she's going to fall in love with Paris. And Paris is like, oh, I wonder when I'm going to meet her. So he goes ahead and he chooses Aphrodite. But then Aphrodite says the most beautiful woman in the world is Helen. Now, Paris does not know this. It's Helen. She lives over in Greece, not Troy, and she is at the court of King Menelaus. But she does not say that Helen is Menelaus's wife. Okay, so Paris is completely dumb about that. Moving on. After that beauty contest, Paris then competes in some Greek games. You guys know about the Olympics. It's kind of like that. And he does so well, right, that they're kind of afraid that Paris is going to be harmed because people would be jealous that he competed so well. So his foster father reveals who he really is, says that he's the prince of Troy, and the Trojans, King Priam and Queen Hecuba, completely forget about the prophecy that Paris could cause the downfall. And they invite him back into the court. So let me move this down here to the bottom. We're at slide 9. Don't want to get too far. Okay, one little tidbit of information, you might remember this from before our break, was that the beautiful Helen that's been promised to Paris, she is the daughter of none other than Zeus. And this woman, this human woman named Leda, she's the queen of Sparta, and she's married to this guy Tyndareus. Well, one day when Leda was bathing in a stream, Zeus swims up and he's in the shape of a swan, and they become lovers, and she has the baby, and the baby is so gorgeous, and it's Helen, and that's who's going to be going with Paris. So now let's see, where was I? Now Helen is so beautiful when she gets of age to marry that all of these men come clamoring to marry her. One of them, by the way, is our hero Odysseus, but lots of other guys too, lots of suitors. They're called suitors. But Tyndareus, her foster father, takes the advice of Odysseus, who says, hey, if there's a whole lot of suitors, then maybe all the guys should swear an oath and support whoever it is that Helen gets to marry. And so that's how that works out. And then Tyndareus chooses Menelaus, not Odysseus. But Helen really never loved him, so that's trouble, right? Now, going back to Prince Paris. Prince Paris of Troy, he goes he's been told that he needs to make a journey across the ocean and go to Greece and go to Sparta to the court of King Menelaus. He's there on a diplomatic visit. King Menelaus treats him very kindly and with respect, and he has all the trust in the world with Paris. But unfortunately, King Menelaus has to leave on a little business trip, and while he's gone, Helen and Paris, their eyes meet, and sparks fly, and they fall in love. And then Helen sneaks onto the ship with Paris, and they go back to Troy, all the way back across the ocean. But when Menelaus returns from his business trip, he is beyond furious. I mean, he's boiling mad, and he suspects that it's not that she's been kidnapped beyond her control, that she actually loves Paris and she's done this on her own, and he wants revenge. So he asks his brother, King Agamemnon. Now, whenever you hear this guy's name, Agamemnon, think anger. He's a powerful leader of Mycenae, and he's one of Helen's former suitors, in fact. And he says, brother, I need your help getting my wife back. And so, of course, King Agamemnon has to help because he's sworn an oath. But then all of Helen's other former suitors are expected to do the same thing and fight against Troy because they swore an oath too. Last slide, guys. Before the Trojan War begins, many of those suitors did not want to go to war, despite their promise, despite their oath to support whoever is Helen's husband. And Odysseus, who's on his beautiful island of Ithaca, he's there and he's just had a baby Telemachus. And when he hears that there's this impending battle to go get Helen back, he pretends to be crazy. So what he does is he takes a plow and he goes out on the beach of Ithaca and he pretends he's plowing a field even though he's just going through the sand. It's very crazy, right? But when Menelaus's men come to get him to say, hey, you've got to abide by your oath, what they do is they take baby Telemachus and they lay him down in front of Odysseus's oxen team right before Telemachus is about to get cut in half by the plow. He stops because he says, of course, I can't run over my own son. So the jig is up. They know that he's not really crazy, and so he has to abide. So the king of Ithaca, Odysseus, has to gather a lot of, this is not on your slideshow, he has to gather a lot of men from his island, all of his soldiers, and they get onto a bunch of ships. I think it's 12 ships, and they get onto these ships, and then they go to sail for Troy. And that's the end of our first video about the Trojan War Notes. We're going to go ahead and stop that for now. Thank you very much for watching, and our next video will be about the Trojan War Notes Part 2.